way Inca society functioned, we now see it as one of the many exterior palaces from Cusco for an Inca king.
Deep in the mountains of Peru, ancient stone ruins stand as one of history's most puzzling creations. For centuries, people have wondered how these massive blocks were moved and carved with such flawless precision. Some believed it was beyond human ability, hinting at something otherworldly. Now, new discoveries are shedding light on what really happened, and the truth is more astonishing than anyone imagined. Could this finally explain the impossible engineering that has baffled experts for generations? Join us as we uncover the shocking revelation behind Peru's greatest mystery and the megalithic ruins no human could ever build. An ancient mystery. Walk into the highlands of Peru, and the first thing that will leave you speechless isn't the altitude. It's the stones. At Sacsayhuaman, just above Cusco, walls rise like frozen waves of rock. These aren't just big stones. Some blocks weigh over 200 tons. To put that in perspective, that is the equivalent of more than 150 small cars stacked into a single shape, lifted and set perfectly into place on a steep Andean hillside. How could people with no wheels, no cranes, and no modern steel machinery possibly have done this? At Ollantaytambo, the story only gets stranger. The fortress terraces are built with massive pink granite stones, hauled from a quarry nearly 10 kilometers away. To reach the site, workers would have had to move the blocks across a raging river and then up a steep slope. Archaeologists still debate how these stones, each weighing dozens of tons, were dragged and lifted in an era when even the most advanced tools were made from bronze. Bronze is far too soft to carve or shape granite. Every theory feels like a guess, because none fully explain the logistics. The cutting itself is another puzzle. At both Sacsayhuaman and Ollantaytambo, the stones don't just sit on top of each other. They interlock like a three-dimensional jigsaw puzzle. Each stone has up to a dozen sides, fitting seamlessly with its neighbors. No mortar, no binding agent, just raw rock, locked so tightly that even a razor blade can't slide between the joints. Even more remarkable, these walls have withstood earthquakes that leveled colonial-era buildings around them. When the Spanish came, their churches crumbled. The Inca stonework didn't budge, and the smoothness of the cuts defies belief. Granite and andesite are among the hardest stones on Earth, ranking high on the Mohs hardness scale. Modern stonemasons need diamond-tipped saws to work them. Yet in Peru, some surfaces look as though they were sanded with laser precision. Tool marks are visible, but they don't resemble the work of bronze chisels. Some researchers argue they look more like the result of advanced drilling or sawing techniques, technologies that history says should not have existed in the Andes centuries ago. One example can be found at Sacsayhuaman, where blocks curve and bend, as if they were molded, not carved. The precision is so exact that geologists have struggled to explain whether these stones were somehow softened through methods we no longer understand, or whether thousands of workers chipped away with superhuman patience and skill. Either explanation feels unsatisfying. What makes this mystery even more intriguing is that we don't find a clear record of how it was done. The Inca left oral histories, but little in terms of written documentation. Spanish chroniclers like Pedro Chiesa de Leon recorded their awe, but admitted they could not imagine how the stones were moved or shaped. Even today, engineers who study the walls admit that reproducing them with modern equipment would be an expensive and almost impossible task, especially on mountain slopes at nearly 12,000 feet above sea level. This raises the central question. Was this simply genius human engineering, perfected over generations and lost to time? Or did the builders of Sacsayhuaman and Ollantaytambo have access to techniques or knowledge that does not fit our current timeline of history. When we turn to the records left behind, the Inca themselves never claimed to have built the massive stone structures at Cusco, Ollantaytambo, or Sacsayhuaman. Instead, their oral traditions spoke of earlier people as the true builders. These stories often describe them as giants, or as a civilization that came before the Inca, vanished, and left behind their impossible stonework. Archaeology seems to support this divide. Walk through Cusco, or Ollantaytambo, and you can see it with your own eyes. The lower foundations are made from perfectly cut, multi-angled megalithic blocks, seamlessly fitted together. On top of them sits more familiar Inca construction, made from smaller, neatly stacked stones. The difference is striking. The Inca were master builders, no doubt, but their work looks entirely different from the colossal foundations below. Science adds another layer to the mystery. Carbon dating of organic material around the sites points to multiple phases of occupation. While the Inca flourished in the 15th and 16th centuries, some of these foundations appear to date back centuries earlier. In certain cases, they may predate the Inca by well over 1,000 years. This suggests that the Incas inherited and reused structures already standing long before their empire rose to power. Historians and archaeologists debate who those original builders might have been. Some point to an older, now vanished civilization. What complicates matters is that no written records survive from these ancient cultures, leaving us with stonework but no story of how it was made. This blend of oral tradition and scientific evidence paints a picture of continuity rather than a single act of construction. Generations lived among these walls, built on top of them, and adapted them. Each era added its own mark. Yet the question remains: who first cut and set those giant megaliths? And what knowledge did they possess that even the Inca respected enough to build upon rather than replace? When we try to imagine the scale of effort behind the sites, it becomes clear that moving and shaping blocks of stone weighing over 100 tons was not just a matter of manpower. Even with thousands of workers, simple levers and ropes do not explain how these stones were quarried, transported across rugged terrain, and then fitted together so precisely that a sheet of paper cannot pass between them. This puzzle has led researchers, historians, and even local traditions to explore theories that stretch the limits of what we consider possible for ancient civilizations. Keep watching as we explore the theories. A circle of advanced knowledge, forgotten and rediscovered. Starting with the Tiwanaku civilization, based near Lake Titicaca, which thrived long before the rise of the Inca. Their ruins at Pumapunku display stonework as mysterious as anything in Cusco or Ollantaytambo. Some archaeologists suggest that the builders of these earlier cultures had knowledge of engineering that was lost when their societies collapsed. The Incas may have inherited and admired this work, but the origins go back even further. If true, it means that we are dealing with a cycle of advanced knowledge, forgotten and rediscovered across generations. Legends from the Andes add another dimension. Local stories speak of stones that were softened, almost as if they could flow like clay before being set in place. At first glance, this sounds mythical, but it raises interesting questions. Could the ancients have known natural methods of altering stone that modern science has overlooked? Some researchers point to plants in the Amazon with unusual chemical properties that could, in theory, break down certain minerals. While no conclusive evidence exists, the idea that organic compounds might have been used to weaken rock surfaces continues to draw interest. Modern science has also offered unconventional explanations. One idea is acoustic levitation, the use of sound waves to move heavy objects. In laboratory experiments today, sound can indeed lift small particles. Some theorists wonder whether scaled-up techniques could have allowed ancient builders to reduce the weight of stone blocks or ease their transport. Another possibility is magnetic manipulation. Certain types of andesite and granite contain magnetic minerals, and if ancient builders discovered ways to control or exploit these properties, it could have aided in moving megaliths. Again, no hard proof exists, but these hypotheses challenge the assumption that brute force was the only tool available. There is also speculation about forgotten alloys or tools. Archaeologists have found no chisels or saws capable of cutting andesite or granite with the precision seen at sites like Sacsayhuaman. Bronze, which the Inca used, is far too soft. Iron and steel, which could do the job, were unknown in the region before European contact. This gap suggests that either specialized tools once existed and have not survived, or the builders used entirely different methods, possibly involving abrasives, thermal techniques, or even chemical treatments to shape stone. Skeptics argue that none of these theories are necessary. They suggest that with enough time, labor, and ingenuity, ancient people could have achieved what we see today using methods we have simply not reconstructed. After all, human history is filled with examples of brilliant problem-solving long before the invention of modern machines. Yet the sheer scale and precision of Andean megaliths keep the door open for possibilities beyond conventional explanations. What makes these ruins so fascinating is not just their size, but the fact that they appear to stand at the point where myth meets science. Oral traditions speak of stones that moved themselves. Archaeology shows evidence of civilizations building on foundations they did not create. And science continues to search for physical processes that might account for techniques long forgotten. When you stand at the sites today, it is tempting to think they were always visible, always revered, and always known. But the truth is far different. Many of these breathtaking structures were not preserved in their original form. Instead, they were shattered, buried, or repurposed, leaving only fragments of a much larger story. Natural forces, cultural shifts, and deliberate human actions all played a role in erasing the memory of their builders. The Andes are one of the most geologically active regions on Earth. Records of major earthquakes stretch back centuries, and archaeologists believe these quakes were among the primary forces that brought many of the megaliths to ruin. At Sacsayhuaman, some of the largest stone walls stand intact, but scattered blocks around the site suggest towers and adjoining structures were toppled long ago. In Ollantaytambo, staircases and terraces appear abruptly broken, as though a massive upheaval tore them apart. Geological studies show that seismic waves could easily have shifted even colossal stones weighing hundreds of tons. And when you add to this the torrential floods from El Niño cycles, entire valleys could have been buried beneath mudslides, concealing structures that may still lie hidden. But destruction was not caused by nature alone. Cultural overwrite played an equally important role. The Inca, who rose to power centuries after these megaliths were built, revered them but did not leave records claiming authorship. Instead, they often built directly atop the earlier foundations. In Cusco, finely cut megalithic blocks sit beneath later Inca stonework, clearly showing two distinct phases of construction. For the Incas, these foundations were sacred and practical, but by building upon them, they obscured the original story. When the Spanish arrived in the 16th century, this process of overwriting accelerated dramatically. The Spanish conquest introduced a new agenda, erasing indigenous power and imposing European structures. One of the most striking examples can be found in Cusco, where stones from earlier temples and palaces were dismantled to build colonial churches and government buildings. The convent of Santo Domingo, for instance, was erected on top of the Inca Temple of the Sun, which itself may have been built upon an even older foundation. This repurposing was not accidental. By reusing the stones, Spanish authorities asserted dominance while at the same time erased the cultural memory of what stood before. Also, Inca society preserved history through quipus, knotted cords used to record information, and through the memories of oral historians known as amautas. With the arrival of colonial rule, these traditions were systematically suppressed. Indigenous storytellers were silenced, and their knowledge was dismissed as pagan superstition. Generations grew up with fragmented versions of their own past. For modern scholars, this erasure has made reconstruction incredibly difficult. Archaeologists are often left piecing together fragments of stone, comparing styles, and studying soil deposits to build timelines. Carbon dating reveals phases of occupation, but without written records, the story remains incomplete. In some cases, researchers believe entire complexes may remain underground, undiscovered because landslides or urban expansion have hidden them for centuries. For centuries, the megalithic sites of Peru were explained only through guesswork and legend. Today, however, modern technology is giving us new tools to see what human eyes alone could not. These advances are not only revealing hidden parts of ancient sites, but also forcing scholars to reconsider how much was really known in the distant past. One of the most important breakthroughs has come through LiDAR scanning. This technology uses laser pulses to map the ground, even through thick forest and vegetation. In the Sacred Valley, LiDAR has uncovered terraces, hidden walls, and even full structures that had been buried or forgotten for centuries. These scans show that engineering projects stretched much farther than previously thought, expanding the scale of ancient work across the Andes. They suggest that what we see above ground is only a small part of a much larger and more complex picture. Another discovery comes from spectroscopic analysis of the stones themselves. By studying the surfaces of blocks at sites like Sacsayhuaman and Ollantaytambo, researchers have detected polishing and shaping techniques that do not match the known use of copper or bronze tools. Some surfaces are cut with such precision and smoothness that even modern stone masons find them difficult to explain. In some cases, microscopic traces hint at methods that may have softened or reshaped stone in ways we still do not understand. This evidence challenges the idea that simple hand tools alone were responsible for the creation of these monuments. What's more, technology has also allowed us to digitally rebuild lost structures. Using AI-assisted reconstructions, scientists can model entire complexes based on surviving blocks and foundations. When these models are compared with astronomical data, surprising alignments appear. Many walls and gateways line up with the rising or setting sun during solstices and equinoxes. Others seem connected to the movements of the moon and certain stars. These findings suggest that the builders were not only engineers, but also skilled observers of the sky. They designed their monuments to reflect a deep relationship between the heavens and the earth. Together, these modern tools are rewriting the story of Peru's megaliths. What was once dismissed as exaggeration or myth now appears grounded in evidence. The more we uncover, the clearer it becomes that these builders worked with knowledge far beyond what was expected of their time. Each scan, test, and digital reconstruction adds another piece to the puzzle, showing us that ancient science and engineering were far more advanced than we imagined. We are only at the beginning of this technological awakening. The monuments that once stood silent are now speaking again, not through legend, but through data and discovery. And with each revelation, the mystery of their creation becomes even more fascinating. What do you think? Are we finally uncovering the real story behind these ancient sites? Or have we only scratched the surface? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the following video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.